The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. The Citizen Mike Show starts now.
We're still on Chauncey Peak and Giuffrida Park. We got to get off the mountain next week. Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brudzinski. On my right, Ralph Tomaselli, the editor of the Record Journal. We just got to get off the mountain. I mean, we're still, up there. The leaves are off the trees. We got to do something about that.
It's not
next
quite,
week, we'll have a good, fresh
right.
winter scene, maybe
Right.
a foot of snow, something like
Good.
that. A lot of business to take care of tonight. I want to get back into that story of school renovation plan chapter 2. Of course, the first school renovation plan was 1999, 1998, in that range. And now we have another possibility of another major school renovation plan. I don't want to recreate the wheel by starting the story from the beginning. I think most of our viewers sort of know what's going on, but I do want to get some basic facts, out of the table. And maybe the segue is this. It's a story that appeared in the Record Journal, fairly recently, and it says land use commissions to review sewer plant project. What?
Right.
What? Well, first sentence, a project to ensure the town's sewer plant will meet new phosphorus discharge limits needs approval from 2 local commissions over the next 2 months. Skipping down, the first phase of the project will address state mandated phosphorus limits, and its estimated cost is $55.7 million. Phosphorus. Got it?
Wow.
Sewer plant.
Yeah.
The town may be eligible for about $23 million in state funding. The remaining $32 million would be paid through a low interest state loan. The second phase will upgrade other plant and equipment processes
Right.
with a cost estimate of about $30.8 million. To see the connection between this little sewer
Absolutely.
story
Sure,
and the
I
school
do.
renovation
Yep.
story.
Big bucks.
Big bucks. The water pollution control, anyway, and it goes on. The other fun fact, as I checked into the last available comprehensive annual financial report to see if we still are paying off the school bonds from that first school renovation project, which, was in the 1999 year 2000 range. And we are still paying them off. There's still a balance on those school bonding obligations of about $16 million. Now, this is as of June 30, 2017.
Okay.
That's the last available CAFR. So the beat goes on. And as we know, the Board of Education, acting through Sal Menzo, retained a consulting group to do a school facility study. We showed the clip last week, and we showed a clip of Sal Menzo referring to the Plan of Conservation and Development. I took a copy of a relevant page of the Plan of Conservation and Development. I don't want to make this more than 30 seconds on the Plan of Conservation and Development, but he said, hey, we were just doing what the Plan of Conservation and Development said to do, which is do a school facility study. So I pulled that out, and although the copy is escaping me, the need was described as low. The need for the study was low. Do it in the short term, but the need was low. And so a study has been done. It was presented to the Board of Ed on November 5. My comments on how that meeting was conducted on the last show. Watch the last show. The consultant from Malone and McBroom, who also put together the Plan of Conservation and Development, another fun fact, right?
Okay, right.
Got it? Got the
Right.
coincidence here? The consultant put together 6 alternatives on what to do with the school system, the school buildings, how much you should spend, what you should do with them.
Right.
And they spread out this array of 6 alternatives in front of the Board of Education on November 5. The alternatives ranged in cost, the living alternatives, the ones that survived the November 5 meeting, ranged in cost to the town of about 59.1 million. That's not the gross cost. That's what the town cost would be. To a high of $117.2 million. We have some clips. I think we got about 7 clips that we did not show last week that show another, give more information about this. Ralph, I'm going to take a quick break, take a sip of water, and get your thoughts so far as to where the story is.
Well, you mentioned the Plan
Yeah.
of Conservation and Development recommended a school study.
Yeah.
But I think this is a little more than a study. I mean, what seems to have happened in the last month or so is that at least the Board of Education seems to have bypassed the $15.6 million option that comes with this study and jumped all the way to options that range from 59 million to 117 million. And to me, I'm not sure that's what I didn't read the exact wording in the Plan of Conservation and Development, but I'm pretty certain that it didn't say study and possibly spend up to $120 million on school facilities.
Well, the Plan of Conservation Development is certainly not a document that requires or even recommends that you spend any money whatsoever.
Right.
They're
Okay.
broad concepts.
Right.
They're just broad concepts
Right.
that are thrown out and put into a document. So no one should take that as a mandate or a requirement or even, a recommendation. Heck, it's recommended that it be put in a document that's required by state law, but no one is saying that, okay, now we got to spend tens of millions of dollars.
Right. So
I'm not sure I addressed your comment.
No, but I think
yeah.
the only point I'm saying, to cite this as a reason to get to the point we're at now, I'm not sure that's completely accurate.
So I found my little piece of paper on the Plan of Conservation and Development. It's on page 59, and it says recommended strategies for the Board of Education. There's a couple bullet points. I'm not going to read the whole thing in the interest of time, but it says conduct a school facilities master plan, develop enrollment projections and things like that. How important? Low.
Okay, good.
How soon? Short, meaning do it on a short-term basis. You mentioned another number. You mentioned 15 million,
Right,
just a second ago.
Which, yes, I did.
Okay, Bruce, I think it is slide 5. That's the status quo JPEG. Let's throw that up a little bit out of order because Ralph let the cat out of the bag. Ralph, is this what you were referring to? I think
Yes,
it was.
Right.
I think it
Yes.
was. So this is a slide that I didn't make. This is a slide that comes right from the consultant, and it described alternative 1, which if you get real close to the screen, you can see it is based on the capital needs identified in the district's current strategic plan, which I was talking about last week.
Right.
And according to the consultant, the expert of the day,
Right.
the Board of Education's, and therefore Dr. Menzo's own strategic plan recommended an expenditure of about $15.6 million, and that I believe would include the security measures, the upgraded security. Ralph, you had a thought
Well,
there.
just one other point.
Yeah.
That, the title of this status quo, I mean, is that really, if I said to my wife that I was going to do $150,000 improvements to my house, maybe I'm looking at 150 to $1 million of improvements. If I said I was going to do $150,000 of improvements, I don't know. Is that status quo?
According to the Board of Ed, it is.
Well, but do you think it's?
So,
I mean,
we went into this in great detail last
Okay.
show. No, they just relabeled. They just relabeled their strategic plan, which was the gold standard as to where they wanted to go in the future. The strategic plan was all their hopes and dreams and aspirations for moving the school district ahead
Right.
into the 21st century. And then on the last show, I said that the Board of Ed treated their own strategic plan and expenditures of $15-16 million as dog poop. That's the expression I used
well,
last
status
week.
quo.
Yeah,
You might as well put dog poop
they might as well.
because status quo is not very enticing.
The label
Language,
is not
yeah,
very,
okay,
but you can get a lot of work done for the the $15-16 million
Yeah.
that they rejected summarily. One little fun fact before we get to some of the clips.
Mhm.
Taking the cheapest alternative, other than the
Right.
strategic plan, relabeled status quo, is about $60 million. As you know, when Chairman Vinnie Cervoni was here a couple weeks ago, and we estimated what the principal and interest might be on a bonding authorization, I just redid the calculations
Mhm.
sort of fresh. So if you took $60 million and you bonded it, and again, that is now the most inexpensive alternative on the table from the consultant. You bond that out, and it's about $4,300,000 per year.
Okay.
That's a mill.
Right.
What do you think? I got to cough and get a drink of
Yeah.
water.
No.
You got to buy me some.
What do
time.
I think?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they've jumped way ahead of me
Okay.
in terms of. I'm still back at. I'm not stuck on 15.6 million, but I'd like to talk about 15.6 million and some of the other concepts that they mention as part of this plan.
Well, not going to happen, obviously, because there may be only two meetings, maybe 3 meetings on this. The first meeting is come and gone, and that $16 million option was rejected summarily, and so now they're moving ahead with other options. And our understanding is someone is going to reduce these 5 remaining alternatives down to 3. The question we have been raising, and this is the third show that I think we're bringing this up, is how strong a case do you need to make in order to justify $60 million of expenditures? How much due diligence, how many facts, how much research, how much study, what do you need? What do you need? A strong case, a weak case? I mean, just take the position that got to redo the buildings every 20 years. Is that good enough? Do you need
No, it's not good enough. I would say there's 2 things that jump out from some of the video that I watched, and maybe you discussed them last week, and so I'll be short, but of what not to do. One, there was this clip of the superintendent of schools talking about Sheehan bathrooms, and all of a sudden we went from, $3 million to do some bathroom work, and then he started saying things like, well, you got to knock down this wall, you got to knock down that wall, you got to knock down that wall, you got to knock down that wall, and then some much larger figure was thrown out. And you need to be more specific than that. You can't just say, well, you got to do this wall and that wall. And the other thing that jumps out at me also involves the superintendent of schools, which is, he was asked, and I know you addressed this, but he was asked about, I think, the issue of cost savings, at least 2 or 3 times in the clips that you showed. I think the mayor asked about it, and some other counselors asked about it. And it's also been in the context of, well, if there's declining enrollment and we're doing all these things, where are the savings? And the one clip I'm thinking about, I think his words were, I don't want to address that, or I'm not going to address that. So that's not the way to make your case. I mean, I'd almost rather hear, well, there's no cost savings, rather than in a patronizing way, in his position, at his rate, to say, well, I'm not going to address that. Am I being too harsh?
Not at all.
Okay.
I don't think this is a cost savings type of
No.
alternative.
Right,
This is not about cost savings.
right.
Even though enrollment is going down, there's another issue that you raised that I want to get to is what role should the superintendent play in this decision on whether or not to spend 60 million, 80 million, 100 million, 110 million. How important is the superintendent in this decision-making process and the expertise his staff has? Not a rhetorical question. I'm going to leave it there and see what you have to say about that.
Well, certainly he has a role, but as a, that's why I voted for the school board. I voted for people on the town council. I voted for the mayoral position. So, I'm relying on my elected officials to probably have the largest role in this.
Here's my point, and it is too indirect. The superintendent has outsourced this to a consultant.
Right.
Superintendent has hands off, no responsibility, no accountability. He is not making a recommendation. He is not drilling down with questions. He is not bringing his staff in to support some conclusion that, we can get away with not spending 60 million. We can with 15 or 16, we can do it. Or in the alternative, he needs to come out and fight for 60, 70, 80, $100 million and say, the educational future of our kids are at risk. We're going to have a lousy educational system. Everything is going to fall apart. No one's going to get into college unless we have classrooms that are more flexible and adapted to the 21st century teaching model.
Right. And you spent some time on the consultants last week, and I
We
know
did.
you
Yeah,
were
we
very
did.
clear on how you felt.
I was.
Chris Shortell cut him a little more slack.
He did.
He did.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm in the middle, but there was that
No.
there was that clip. Yeah, you don't like when I'm in the middle. No, I know.
Yeah.
But there was that clip where the board member, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead.
No.
But there's a clip where the board member asks about questions to the consultant. And the superintendent goes out of his way to say, oh, no, I'm not passing along questions to him. And it looks like one way to take it might be that he's like being very magnanimous, if that's the correct word, or, but I'm thinking to myself, well, but you're the one who's the superintendent. Why are they asking a consultant? Why aren't they asking you, who's getting paid $200,000, almost $200,000 a year by the board? But
So we have our first clip
Okay.
coming up. And this is about 2 minutes or so.
Mhm.
And here, Patty Purcell, member of the Board of Education, asked about what these new 21st century classrooms would look like that would cost, 60, 70, $80 million. And this clip is as close as we get to the case for these huge expenditures. About 2 minutes lays out the brief for tens of millions of dollars. There are other bullet points, but this is the major one. Bruce, let's play that one. 3, 2, 1, go.
Ms. Purcell?
I know part of this project was because we were changing our classrooms to more 21st century classroom, and you talked about creating new classrooms. Can you explain what those classrooms would look like, the new classrooms?
Sure. So what we're trying to do is, all these buildings were built in either the 1950s or 1970s model, which is not much different than we've done from the beginning of the century. These were 800 square foot rooms, virtually square rectangular in space. They were limited to design to about 25 students. Teachers located at the front. There's some type of cabinetry or casework that's built in the back or the side, and that's the way it has been from the day it's been built. That limits the ability to turn that classroom around or move that classroom in terms of different configuration, so the teacher could maybe be in the middle and lecture in the surrounding areas, has flexibility with furniture to convert that space to a hands-on type of learning environment. So just based on the size of those classrooms and the hallways down the middle, we would reorient that. What we may end up doing is create 2 classrooms and have the millwork in the center. And all of that could then be connected too. We call it sort of the Bank Street model, especially on the science wing, where a lot of the lab work is in the middle, lecture classrooms are on the side. So it's all reconfiguration of working with what you already have, but giving the flexibility of these spaces not just to be one current use, because that's the way they're currently configured, really for lecture-based learning with the teacher up front. We want to turn that around and just give flexibility.
Would it have all permanent walls, or would they have movable walls?
Well, the permanent walls most likely would be the ones on the hallway, because those are load-bearing walls in most school construction. The ones in between, yes, can be movable depending on the programmatic needs to expand that to either a larger classroom or to smaller classrooms.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Question is, does that make the case?
no.
Because that is the case, pretty much.
Right. Well, but doesn't that have to be like a very, that needs to be a much more involved visual case, right? I mean, these 21st century classrooms exist. The board and the public should have videos of what these classes look like.
So what? So you do.
Right.
I mean, so what? I mean,
Well, no, I'm saying if you're going to I don't think you can make a case the way he just made it. I
that's
think,
the case. Right
well,
there.
then that's not. I think,
Reconfigure, flexibility.
Right, but I need to
teacher in the middle of the room,
Right, but
not lecture based.
but before I
Don't want
decide,
any lecture based stuff going on.
right,
In
before
Wallingford school system, if there's lecturing going on in the Wallingford school system, especially in the upper classes, we need new classrooms, because new classrooms will stop those teachers from lecturing. And in the old classrooms, I guess that's what they're doing. I cut you off, and I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no.
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think you make a good point.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that I am willing to consider this.
Yeah.
I am open-minded to this, but I would need a lot more than that.
Okay. So let's set the stage for the next clip. Whenever you have major renovations going on in the schools, you wonder whether or not that the engines of teaching would be affected, whether there'd be disruption in the classrooms, or the kids would be distracted. All those kinds of issues, and what may apply at one school may not apply at another. It's a serious and important question, and it deserves some thorough examination. This is what we get. Bruce, clip number 2, 3, 2, 1, go.
My question, I guess, really is how do you do this while teaching? I mean, where do you put our students? How does that work logistically?
Well, from a renovation model, I think if the slide that we showed at Lyman Hall, the reasoning behind positioning an addition is to allow that addition to be built independent and allow the school to remain operational. So it's a complicated thing to sort of surgically build a building in one corner. That will have to be studied, as you progress further along with the concept. But the idea is any of those plans you're going to need to build in either mini phases or larger phases of construction.
Satisfied with that answer?
No.
Okay. Going back to that first clip about the classrooms of the future, we got to remember that the person speaking is not an educator. Yeah, he's an architect. So that's again something to keep in mind. Obviously, the issue of disruption, I should say, the fact of disruption is inevitable. It's just how much of it will there be, and how do you prepare the parents? And I think certainly, if things happen in one or more of the schools to disrupt the students, the parents are going to complain, and it may not be enough for the Board of Ed to say, on November 5, 2018, you were warned. It had to be studied. It was complicated. Construction in mini stages or large stages, but Roxanne McKay asked about that, and that was your answer. Let's go to clip 3.
Sure.
All right. It depends. The obvious question is, how long is this going to take, or rephrase, how long is this going to drag out? And it's a fair question, and it certainly depends upon how many schools you're going to redo. But it's an obvious question, and the reason why you have a consultant is to give you a clean, clear, crisp answer to that. Let's see if we get it, Bruce. Clip number 3, 2, 1, go.
these, but what's the shortest to the longest renovation? Like, how many years are we talking about here, roughly? I understand it's phased, and, I'm just trying to get a ballpark.
I think that's hard. I'm not sure we have a duration in mind yet and have thought that through. Obviously, the renovated new models in the existing building will have the most duration. Typically, projects of this scale are usually 2-year projects, ongoing of construction. So I would say of what you've seen, most of these range between 2 to 3 years worth of phasing.
Just curious, we're going to do all this all at once?
It wouldn't be all at once. It would have to be a phased construction program looking at what is the critical path, which project goes first in order to be the either least costly or one that could provide additional swing space and freeing up space for the subsequent construction projects.
So actually, we're talking maybe 6 or 7 years overall total?
Depending on which option, which alternative goes forward, or which of the 3 alternatives are the preferred, we would provide different construction windows for each of those, but they would be multiple-year windows as you're touching on different buildings.
So that answer is coming. We don't have an answer to that yet, but what was your reaction?
Well, I agree with this 2 to 3 year period. I think at least
Is that per building?
per building.
Okay.
And I've watched
Because
both.
I was unclear about that, after
Right.
they were done.
Well, Meriden just renovated 2 high schools. Southington renovated 2 middle schools, and each project took in the 3-year range, and it may have been even a little bit more. But the challenge becomes that for students entering a high school or a middle school, when this project begins, those students will certainly not see the benefits of the project. And in fact, the question then becomes, not only are they going to see the benefits, but how much is their education going to be disrupted? That's a challenge for a school board, a superintendent, et cetera.
Yeah, and at some point at a critical stage in the decision-making process and not after the fact, someone has to present the public with, again, a clean, clear, crisp answer to this.
Right. But I think one answer is generally the more you segregate construction and keep it away, the higher the cost of the construction.
And the longer it takes.
The
probably.
longer it takes.
Sure.
Right. That's exactly it.
Bruce, let's set the table for the next one, which is a clip 4. But this has to do with an additional gymnasium at Lyman Hall, which a lot of viewers and a lot of parents may find very attractive as part of the plan, the issue of a new additional gymnasium. So let's go with clip 4. 3, 2, 1, go.
In larger schools, they often have 2 gyms to accommodate all the different classes, all the extracurriculars, different sporting events. So, and we knew that the gym was an issue at Lyman Hall, so we added actually a Sheehan-sized gym to Lyman Hall, is what that was.
So you're adding a full, the amount of space that's in Sheehan is going to be added to Lyman Hall?
Yes,
Okay.
roughly.
Thank you.
So that's one of the things you're paying or might pay 60, 70, 80, 90 million dollars for is another gym. Your thoughts?
Right. Well, I happen to be intimately familiar with this because both my children went to Lyman Hall. And I will say that the Lyman Hall gym situation compared to Sheehan and even DAG, the Lyman Hall gym is lacking. But that does not mean that you can't address the Lyman Hall gym. It doesn't mean we have to go from 0 or 15 to 59 to address,
Million.
right, to address the Lyman Hall gym.
Yeah. To be discussed,
Right.
to be continued.
Right.
A member of the, moving on to the next clip, a member of the audience got up and asked about something we had talked about off camera, PCBs. PCBs is a chemical often found in older buildings, particularly around window caulk, but I'm not a construction expert, so I don't know where you might find them. The story behind PCBs is once you find them, bad things begin to happen. Depending on the level of contamination, sometimes the federal government gets involved and they require certain remediation measures that can be very, 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 very expensive and also can actually shut down a school in extreme situations. So it's a risk inherent in any construction project. I think it's just a matter that everyone be warned and alerted that this could happen, and it could result in substantially increased costs and a slowdown and even maybe a shutting of the school. And I don't think it serves anyone's purpose to kind of sugarcoat that and to pretend that it may not occur. I think the Board of Ed and the superintendent, who has ultimate responsibility, would be much better off saying we're going to do everything in our power to test for these things, the PCBs, these bad chemicals. I'm going to do everything in our power to make sure the construction is safe and doesn't hurt the kids and staff. But it may be, if this is true, an inherent risk of this kind of construction. I think he's much better off making that sort of a statement, making it very clear right at the beginning, and then moving on, than everyone sort of turning the other way as if it's an obstacle. Now, I'm not trying to push the panic button,
Right.
But there are examples around the state as to what can happen. There's well, let's see the clip first, and I'll get
Okay,
the, so
right.
Bruce, let's roll that clip 6. 3, 2, 1, go.
Was there any consideration for PCBs in the estimated cost?
As part of the overall square footage, abatement is predicted within that square footage number, yes.
For asbestos, but PCBs as well?
Well, you can handle PCBs in a very different way, as I think you do know.
Yeah.
So right now, as part of the $365 per square foot, that's anticipating doing abatement for asbestos and PCBs in terms of predicted abatement.
So there's a story from the Hartford Courant. It goes back to 2015, and then after that, there's, I think, a Southern story. I'm gonna maybe it's not. I'm gonna ask you to help me with,
Right.
but this is from Hartford. Clark School has been closed indefinitely after low levels of hazardous chemicals were discovered in the school after routine testing. City school officials said Thursday, skipping a bit. Quote, low levels of PCBs were identified in Clark's air, prompting school officials to shut down the school. The school building was ventilated and retested multiple times over winter break, with the latest results on Wednesday confirming PCB contamination. And it goes on to talk about the expense and how disappointed everyone was. What happened more locally?
Well, Southington redid its middle schools.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to close down the schools, but PCBs certainly raised the cost of the project and then delayed the length of the project.
Yeah, so this is a story from 2012 in the Record Journal. A headline: PCB cleanup cost at 2 Southington schools may be millions, not
Right.
thousands, the headline says. Skipping a little bit down to the third paragraph, in 2011, an initial PCB screening was performed by this company, DePalo, is that how you pronounce it?
DePalo, yes.
To assist in planning for the $85 million renovations project at the 2 schools. PCBs were found, and the company stated that it would cost less than $50,000. Since that time, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency has increased its charges, and the potential cost could be in the millions. The district has budgeted $1.2 million for remediation at the 2 schools. It goes on to say that Maloney had budgeted $3 million and Platt $3.6 million for PCB remediations. I don't have a follow-up on what actually happened, but that's where that goes. So now if you have schools being redesigned, reconfigured, a different crop of students going to one school than before, you might think that traffic, might be disrupted. And so the public ought to be alerted about that, and undoubtedly they will. The question is it before the fact or after the decision has been made? But a question was asked about parking. Bruce, let's set that one up. I think it's clip 7 on parking. 3, 2, 1, go.
In all this, did you look at, because if we put all the high school students in one place, we have a huge parking lot and in traffic, a different traffic pattern. Did that come into play?
We didn't think that there would be a significant impact to traffic where Lyman Hall, keep in mind that DAG would be converted to central office, so you've eliminated that middle school traffic from that site. We did provide additional parking on the site for Lyman Hall. You would obviously need more parking, but we didn't factor in any, we didn't look at it further. Obviously, you would need to study that if you take that option further.
Your thoughts? It's just not, I mean, it's one of the things that you just can overcome. I mean, it's just more than one
Yeah,
of the more routine
I think
problems.
this can be overcome. I think some people might be surprised they are not keeping up with the story to find out that DAG may become the central office.
Right.
That we've gotten to that point, or at least some people's mind, we've got to that point.
Yeah. Well, you know, traffic is always always an issue. When a new project rolls into a neighborhood,
Right.
traffic is always something
Absolutely.
that neighbors are concerned about. So, I mean, my philosophy is that, you know, maximum disclosure with minimum delay. I mean, that should be the motto of every newspaper and of every corporation and public agency. You know, don't hide it, don't sit on it, don't sugarcoat it. Maximum disclosure, minimum delay. You don't get panicky about it, but you're very honest about it. And so it's a little bit early in the project to talk about that, but it's got to be talked about.
Good.
You know, parking and traffic needs to be. So we've been brushing over this very important issue of the state contributing to the cost of construction.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had been talking only about the town's share.
Right.
But the cost of construction is, in quick math, roughly double the numbers we have been talking about, the gross cost. And it all depends on something called a reimbursement rate. And I watched the video, the meeting, and I replayed it, and I tried to make sense out of it all. I think it still needs to be clarified, the reimbursement rate, if anyone cares about it at this point.
Right.
You know, maybe it's $60 million. Those that don't like it is, I don't care what the reimbursement rate is. And maybe those that desperately want construction works, I don't care about it either. I'll pay whatever I need to pay. But the reimbursement rate is something that the state computes. It's a very mysterious calculation. I think some towns, or they used to be like Bridgeport, could get 70-80% or something. Wealthier towns get less. But also, if you have a school that is not being used to capacity, it's not filled with students, and there's ratios and calculations. If you have a school that's not being utilized to capacity, your reimbursement rate is less. And so you could have a maximum rate. Well, if you were fully occupied, if the school was fully used, you would get one rate. But if your population of the school slips and drops and drops and slips, what would the reimbursement rate be at that point? This needs to be clarified. I was confused. There was a lot of words spent on answering this. I'm not sure it was clear. It needs to be addressed again, maybe with a written, executive summary, because it's a swing of $10 to $15 million.
Right.
If they are too optimistic about it. But I tried to get the clip that showed the gist of what their answer was on this reimbursement rate. Let's play that last one, Bruce. 3, 2, 1, go.
Say, could you just share with the group, everybody in TV land really, what the current reimbursement rates are for classroom space versus like central office? You know what I'm talking about, what those percentages are?
Well, typically, it's 53.93% you would get back as long as you're within the square footage for the school, this is. When you do central office, you take half of that rate.
It's student use and non-student use.
Yes.
Is that, am I saying that basically right?
Correct. Within that rate, they will deduct certain things such as the bleachers. They're not going to give you that full reimbursement on. There's certain things.
Gotcha.
Which is why we use the word anticipated. We're telling you the maximum, really.
Is the 53.9 is max?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the non-student use is half of that, right? Thank you.
So it is what it is. That needs to be clarified. I want to change this subject to two other short little items, but I want to get your final wrap-up view as to where we are in the process and what you'd like to see happen.
What I
Caught you there, didn't
no, not at all.
Okay.
I think what I'm thinking about right now is I'm not thinking about numbers as much as process. how are we going to go about deciding what we want our schools to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? So I think it's really important that we choose a process that is going to make decision makers, the public, feel comfortable. And I'm not sure they have that process right now.
There's going to be another meeting. I understand it's going to be November 10 if it stays on schedule. And, we'll address it after that.
Okay.
And we have Tom Laffin and Joe Marone coming on the show in subsequent episodes, and we'll keep up the conversation. Changing the subject to one you and I talked about, but it's the community pool, but we never had a chance to sort of finish it because I was always watching the clock and we ran out of time. But the one question I wanted to ask you,
Yes.
should after the pool is redone, should non-residents be allowed to come at an increased ticket rate? I mean, nothing prohibitive, but okay, I don't want to get into the differential charge issue.
Right.
But just the issue, should non-residents be allowed to come? I think it's an open question right now, but your view.
Well, I am not ruling out non-residents coming, but what I would like to see as part of the pool study or the process of deciding how much to spend on community pool is how much revenue is the pool going to generate? How much revenue should the pool be expected to generate? How much do you estimate users are going to contribute to this project? And certainly non-residents would give you the flexibility that if you did some residential computations and you didn't like what they were, you could also look at non-residents contributing to the cost of the pool.
Okay. So I've been thinking about this.
Good.
Because I knew I was going to ask you, and you knew probably I was going to ask you. My view, I think is pretty clear. For the first year or two, no non-residents.
Okay.
I don't expect the pool to break even. I don't particularly, I don't particularly care. It's an amenity. There are a lot of amenities that don't pay its way. So in the first couple of years, I think a new redone pool will cause a lot of excitement. A lot of people, a lot of residents want to come and try it out, to give it a go. And I don't want residents crowded out. I don't want one resident crowded out because they pay their taxes to subsidize this, because non-residents have been invited in. If we find that resident demand is such that that's enough. I mean, I don't frankly care about another $10,000 in tag sales or $20,000 in tag sales if Wallingford residents can't get in, can't get parking, or are inconvenienced. So I would give it a go with residents only, then review it. Okay. But my first preference is Wallingford residents only.
But I think one thing that I was trying to get into, and maybe I made it to dollars and cents,
sure,
was the notion of making this pool accessible, attractive to come to, easy to pay for.
Well, that it will be.
Okay.
If it comes to
and I
fruition.
think I think in terms of hours, how you buy tags, where you buy tags, I think I want to see that. I want to see that talked about before the cost of the project is decided.
So on the next show or two, we'll put up a JPEG, and we did it on the last show, I think, that had the layout of the new pool. I think it's going to be very, very impressive. The cost might be in the $4 to $6 million range. I understand that procedures are moving along, and we should have a design, a more firm design, and a more firm cost in the spring of 2019, and we'll see where that goes. I think they've worked out ease of buying pool tickets. I think they're in the process of working it out so you can get it online. I think people like you and me, if we want to see the pool open for an extended season, through Labor Day, at least in the heat of the summer, I think you got to keep the pressure on and make that absolutely clear. That's what we're looking for. And a review of pool hours so that, mom and dad come home from work in the heat of the afternoon in August, it's 5 o'clock. That's one of the hottest times of the day. They at least get a couple hours in.
Right.
So maybe not every day of the week, but certainly a few days of the week. Keep it open to 7:30 or something like that.
I agree.
mean, please. We've got a couple minutes. Let's talk about CMEC a little bit. We haven't talked about that in a long, long time.
Uh-huh.
There have been some filings in the last few months where the parties, CMEC and Wallingford Electric Division, have narrowed down their differences. You know, I'm sort of jumping into the middle of this. I think most of the viewers know, who watch this show and read the Record Journal, Connecticut Municipal Electric Energy Cooperative and the Wallingford Electric Division have been going head-to-head in this very costly arbitration
Right.
over billings. Wallingford claims that it was overbilled. CMEC claims not true. I think we know, going back many years, that Wallingford Electric Division at one point claimed that it was overbilled like $17 to $20 million or thereabouts. And so they've been fighting in arbitration, and an arbitrator is going to decide it. I think the arbitrator is just about ready now to start the decision process, to very soon to put pen to pencil. There may be some interim steps. The Record Journal may be following up on that. I don't know, but I think the end is in sight. Based on these latest filings, the Wallingford Electric Division, based on the filings, I don't know about private conversations, private emails, private letters, winks and nods and handshakes. That I don't know about. I'm just saying, based on what they filed, the Wallingford Electric Division hoped to get $3.6 million for past billings. CMEC conceded $2.3 million. Got it? So the difference between them is a mere $1.3 million. Then the question is, well, how much was spent in legal fees on this dispute? I'm not on the arbitration, because the dispute started before the arbitration did. And so the start date of the legal expense is very important. I think the Wallingford Electric Division is somewhat confused as to how much is spent on it, based on conflicting responses that I'm aware of. But we'll take that up maybe in another show.
Okay.
But maybe we'll call it a day. We'll
All
call
right,
it a
we'll
wrap.
call it a day.
Yeah, unless there's something on your mind. I think no. You want to call it a day?
No.
Thanks for watching the Citizen Mike Show, everybody. We do appreciate it. Ralph and I are here on Wednesday nights. You can watch the Citizen Mike Show Thursdays at 9 p.m. on WPAA, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Or you can go to YouTube and search the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. You'll find all the appropriate prompts. You can get on YouTube and watch it that way, or contact me through the studio, or however way you can, and I can send you a link directly to the YouTube show when it's posted up. Thanks. Good night, Ralph. Good night, everybody.